Welcome to Authored by Us, a podcast celebrating children's books about characters of color or of different cultural experiences, and the authors who bring these diverse works to life. Each week, we invite you to join us as we turn the pages of these bookshelf gems and hear from their creators who understand that stories of diverse experience truly come to life when authored by us. Here's your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Greetings and welcome, listeners. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Authored by Us. Today, we are joined by author Julie Carter, and she is here to share with us her book, A Good Day. Now, I know everyone looks forward to having a good day. So, Julie, tell us about your book, A Good Day.
Yeah, so I want to start off by saying thanks for having me here. A Good Day is really a simple anytime read that was inspired by my son. He was about 18 months at the time. And it's really just documenting his routine. Like, this is how his day pretty much started from the time he woke up to the time we got in the car to head over to daycare.
You know, I can understand what it's like chronicling your day with a young child.
Yes.
And you depict that very well in your book. You know, he starts when he wakes, and there are all the different items that he goes through in the course of his day. And so I just thought it was wonderful that as a parent, you put this together for children to read and see their experiences as they unfold on a page. One of the things I love is that you show his entire family, an entire Black family featured in this book. And every member of his family has a role in his morning routine. So for you, why was this emphasis on the morning routine and how his family helps him to get ready for his day such an important thing to depict in your book?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we kind of get caught up in, what society wants us to see. And not a lot of brown families get to see themselves depicted in a good light, right? And that's not to say that it doesn't exist. I want to make sure I'm very careful. But, for the most part, coming from the Virgin Islands, being born and raised and by one parent, right? It was different for me. Like, everything that I saw was on TV. So the fact that I have a family, and it happens to be blended too, because my daughter is actually my bonus baby. It was really important that I let folks know that, hey, brown families, they have good days too. And here's how it starts. And it's all the crazy things that you would think. And we love getting through it together, right? So it was really important that we were sort of like his nucleus, including the dog. Don't forget the dog's in there too.
I saw the pets. It was an entire family.
Our entire family, yep.
I love that you mentioned that you are from the U.S. Virgin Islands, because that's something that we share. And there are two parts of your book that reminded me so much of home and brought home the fact that you are also from the Virgin Islands. One, his breakfast, because that looked like somebody's oatmeal, right? And number two, when you talked about him feeling the breeze on his face. And so it's a little bit in the illustration, but it's how you really conveyed what his experiences were like. And so I saw in the illustration how vivid they were, that I saw his breakfast that morning. I'm like, oh, wow, that does look like oatmeal. That looks appetizing. And in the depiction of him riding in the car going to school and the wind blowing on his face, and you talked about the breeze blowing on his face, and your illustrations were so vivid that as I read the breeze, I could feel myself thinking about the breeze blowing on my face.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. I wish I could take all the credit for the illustration, but Kevin Banal, who is a Filipino illustrator just starting out, it's really by mere luck that we actually got paired together. He did a really good job of literally just taking the story and depicting it so colorfully and so beautifully. I don't know if it's the fact that, Kevin himself is brown, right? Because he's obviously not necessarily Caucasian in the fact that, he's not European per se, right? He's Filipino, understanding like that breeze effect, right? Understanding the oatmeal effect too, right? Literally lumping all those fruit pieces in there as well. So, it was really the luck of the draw, finding, Kevin Banal, like he did an awesome job. And I think, I'm definitely looking forward to the different projects that we have coming up too.
So Julie, you're right. Having the right type of illustrator to bring your words to life is so important, because the author and the illustrator go hand in hand. As you were preparing to do your book, what influences did other books have in terms of how you wanted your book to look with regard to their illustrations?
Because my son was so young at the time, I wanted to make sure that if I wrote a story about him, so if CJ was about 18 months, that means my daughter was about 5, right? 5-ish. So 5, 6-ish. So I think it was really important that I had really like vivid, like bright colors. So that way, not only my daughter could enjoy sort of like going through the story as well, but also that my son can sit there and be like, oh, okay, great. This is an awesome book. Even if I don't understand the words, the pictures are great, right? So, so that was really important to me. As it relates to, books that sort of like inspired me. I remember when CJ was born, I got a book from an old college teammate that I played basketball with at George Mason. And it's called Love You Forever. So it's by Robert Munch. I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly. And it's not about a Brown family, but it was just the idea that I'm going to love you forever. And she kind of goes through like the story about, babies here, watching the son kind of grow. And then she's getting old and she ages. And then the son's singing a song to her. And I was like, and I remember the book made me cry. And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. So, and it wasn't the most colorful book, but it was definitely vivid in that the story matched the words. And I was like, look, I want my book to sort of have that same effect. Not that it's going to make anybody cry, but it gives you whatever emotion that it emotes. I wanted to make sure that it was definitely one that was strong. So the fact that you were able to read the book and you're like, oh my God, I love this and I love that. Like, that's all I could ever ask for, right? That's all I could ever ask for.
You brought up something that I was going to ask you about, but you already revealed it. So the character in your book, his name is CJ, and you said something about your son, CJ. So in my book, there's always this question, who's the little boy? Is that Raphael? And so, yes, it is my son, but he doesn't have a name. But clearly in A Good Day, your character is named CJ, and he's the only person in the story who has a name. So yes. I'm going to take it that he was inspired by your CJ.
Yes, he was definitely. This little character was definitely inspired by my CJ. I actually sent Kevin pictures of the family. And funny story, when Kevin actually first drew some of these pictures, we were not a Brown family. And I was like, Kevin, we are a Brown family. That's to kind of let him know that. But yes, these characters are definitely inspired by our family. And the only person that actually has a name happens to be CJ because, it really was his day, right? Like this is how he was talking kind of the same at the time. And I just wanted to make sure we depict that. And, of course, if you notice, like after mom, the first person that he really saw was like his sister, right? Like, yeah. So, dad was like, I want to throw it out there, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Like dad was the last. Hey, I'm just saying, just put it out.
Yeah. And you're right. You cover everyone in his family. Everyone has a role that they play in getting him ready. And it's not necessarily a gender-based role. So there's so many books right now that are starting to show Black families. And I think that that's important that you see that level of representation. But you also portrayed in your book that parents in these families are sharing roles. And it's not mommy's role, it's not daddy's role, but it's a parent's role and the role that parent plays in gearing that child up for their day.
Exactly. I think it was really important, right? I mean, my husband happens to be active duty, and I thank him for the sacrifices that he makes on a daily basis for us to be free. So he's not always, a part of the day because sometimes he has to report really early, but in those places and instances where he can be, he's always present. So I just wanted to make sure that, that was depicted as well. And you're right. It sometimes, depending on what it is, I'm like, look, I've been doing this a whole week, dude. It's your turn. So he'll be the one that starts the day with the kids. But for the most part, yes, it does rest on mom's hands. As they get older now, because CJ's actually 4 and his sister's 10. It's kind of it's changing a little bit, but it's definitely really important that all of these books include all of the family members, and that it's okay to be whatever your family unit is, right? Whatever that immediate family looks like for you.
However family is, it's how it needs
However
to be
family is.
presented.
Yes, exactly.
I laughed at the beginning of the book because it starts with, CJ doing what little kids do. They sleep. And so he wakes up and he screams for daddy. But who appears? Mommy appears. Yeah. Why was it that mom appeared in the story?
So, that is exactly how it is. So in my house, I happen to be the stickler, right, for the rules. And, in the morning, if daddy's taking routine, he'll let the kids watch TV as they're eating breakfast. And, when mom's taking routine, we're not, look, we got a job to do, get ready for school, keep it moving. So he knew that from a young age. When he would wake up, first person he would call out for was his dad, because he's like, daddy. And I'm like, hey, morning, time for us to get ready. Because he knows, like, daddy's going to kind of take his time. He's not going to rush him to get nothing done. And mom's I'm just a different beast. So it's like, look, we got something to do. Let's keep it moving. The routine. Let's go down that path. So, but he would always call out for his dad. And I'm like, oh, nope, it's just me. Just me here. Dad's probably doing something else. Get ready for work. That's exactly how his day started.
And it's very clear in the book that CJ is a happy little kid. So I think every page that he's featured on, he's smiling, with the exception of one page where you told him, hey, it's time to go potty. And so he didn't have a most pleasant look on his face, but when he was finished, he said, all done. And he smiled and he was so happy. And it said to me that having a positive disposition, the impact that has on your day as you go through it, and just being able to be bright and thinking positively as you endeavor out. And even with this young boy, to me, that was very clear.
I would say that, not to get too far into my story behind why I created this story for my son, because if you notice, his mom is actually bald at the time, and at the back of the book is I introduced myself as the author. I also tell folks that I'm an end-stage cancer student. That is a true story as well. So when I wrote this book, I had recently got diagnosed, and I think there was sort of like this sense of urgency that the end is near, and there's all this good stuff happening around me. So can I document it so I don't forget it, right? So, oh my God, I'm hoping not to cry. I hope not to get too emotional. But, when I read Love You Forever and being able to write this book, it's kind of one and the same, right? So if I get to the point where my kids are taking care of me, they can, kind of like reminisce on the good times where mom was up and doing everything that she needed to do, and be, and just be in a good place there. So, it was really important that I sort of like memorialized sort of like, that young age where they're at right then.
What you're sharing with children, and by your revelation at the back of your book, is that not every day is a good day.
Exactly.
And this opens the door for parents to be able to have a conversation with their children about, why does CJ's mom hair? Why is it not there? Right. Or if you're reading the back of the book, what does this actually mean? And it opens up the door for a different kind of conversation. Yeah. Or for some other child who has a mom who looks like CJ's mom, that child gets to say, oh, wow, my mom looks like that. So I think it's a very brave way to share your story and be able to memorialize your experiences with your family in such an amazingly creative and empowering way.
I definitely appreciate you saying that. I think, it was hard thinking about how I was going to introduce myself. It really was, because, I think when people see me, if I don't tell you my story, you really don't know the story. But what also people don't know is what it takes for me to get up every day and sort of have the disposition that I have too. And a lot of it really is embedded in the fact that I have 2 young children, right? And I am the strength of our family, right? So it's, yes, my husband's amazing, and he brings his own strengths, but for a lack of a better sort of expression, they depend on me, right? They depend on me to not necessarily be too much of a burden. So I try my best to not be that, right? And if you're not going to be a burden, you got to do something. So I might as well be inspiration, right? I always say my kids can never say that their mom quit. They just can't. They can't say that, she got diagnosed with cancer and she just rolled up in a ball and said, this is going to be it. I'm still trying to find the positives.
Well, I will say this to you, Julie, that the stories we have are very personal to us. And so when we share them with other people, it's usually best when we tell our stories ourselves, because who else can share those stories, what's in our heart, what our experiences are, other than when we put ourselves in the position of being the author. That's what we need to be able to do so that we can tell the stories that we know personally and share them with others. We'll be right back with our author, Julie Carter.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Authored by Us is made possible by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So we're back with Julie Carter. Julie, it seems as though your book, A Good Day, is a love letter and a memory keeper to your son and to your family, talking about experiences that you had with him as he was growing up. And so it's a way to keep those stories alive and continue to share that with him and in turn share that with other children. I know this was your first book, but do you have any other books that are coming that kind of follow along the same path?
Yeah, so I actually have a book right now that Kevin is currently illustrating called A Good Secret. Now, it's funny, it wasn't supposed to be a good secret, but the feedback that I got when I initially shared the story was our family secret just does not sound children-ish enough. So, so I was like, okay. So, I told Kevin, I said, Kevin, what do you think about the title? A Good Secret. And he's like, oh, that would be perfect because it kind of falls in line with the series of A Good Day. So I was like, okay, fine. Full disclosure, that I don't want to talk about what the secret is because then that gives away the book too much. But yeah, it will be another book that depicts my family and our dog. And our dog, the dog. Who's really black, by the way, but apparently when you do black in the coloring, it doesn't necessarily show up the same. So he ended up being gray. So I just want to let you guys know that Olaf is really black. He's a black dog. Yeah, so that's what's coming next. And again, it takes you through another step, but that's probably going to, have the same bio on the back, because I think that's really important that folks understand that, yeah, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just point blank. There is the end in sight. But that end doesn't necessarily need to be dark and gray. And it really is what you make of it. So yeah, so that's definitely in the works at the moment. I'm hoping that, within the next month or two that I'll have it in the stores as well. But yeah, so it's been really interesting. I always thought that I would be an author. I just thought that I'd probably be doing I know this is like a children's book conversation here, but I really thought I'd be doing like Zane-ish books, if you guys know who Zane is. Or 50 Shades of Grey, but that didn't turn out to be my story. And I think, it has more purpose, it has more purpose, talking about my children and my family and, contributing to the representation that we don't get to see a lot of.
Kids are they're great sources of inspiration. I mean, there are some things that a kid would do on a daily basis that could keep us in a series of books.
True story.
Yeah.
True story. I do want to, I'm still trying to figure out ways in which I can sort of not necessarily make CJ so much of the, the protagonist as much. So I'm still kind of cultivating that a little bit. I don't know how the rest of these books are going to unfold, but they definitely, my kids just have such different personalities. Mm-hmm. CJ's more likely to narrate something, and my daughter is just more likely to just kind of go with the flow.
Well, I will share this. When we brought out the Never Snowy Christmas, my son was 7. And so, he continues to ask, Mom, we need to do a second part of the Never Snowy Christmas. He's now 13. I'm pretty sure he is still expecting that he will be the main character, and not necessarily that the character is now 13 years old, but so once you make them the star of the book, I think they're going to try to hold on to that. Well, CJ is probably going to tell you the next book should be CJ ...
And I think I think that's really a good point too. But, I think my daughter does a really good job because she's really artistic, right? Like she loves to color. She loves to like write little poems, even though sometimes I'm like, Munch, I don't know about that one. But, she really does. She really does love it. We love doing that stuff. So that's why it was really important to me that I made her editor in this book, because when I read it, she was really my first. Yeah. So the version that I sent you didn't have the page where I listed her, but in the book that's published, it actually has both of them listed as the editors, because they are, because I read it to them first before we even illustrated it. And then they were like, oh, okay, that's good, Mom. And they smiled. And so it was really it was sort of like, an affirmation, like, hey, they like this. And that's all that matters, right? If nobody else likes this book, my kids like the book because it's about their story, right? So that was really good. Even when my daughter saw the illustration of herself, she was like, I said, you think that looks like you? She was like, yeah, kind of. Okay. And then I'm good. I said, you think this looks like your brother? She's like, yeah, kind of. She's like, why is that little puff on his hair? Is that like where his little hair was before? I was like, yeah, you remember? She's like, yeah, I do remember. So they definitely are listed as my editors, and they'll probably continue to be my editors for the series that are coming, or, I don't even know if it's going to be a series, but definitely a good secret is coming within the next couple of months. I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
I love it.
Yes.
And when you do launch a good secret, we will expect to hear back from you. We'll bring you back to the stage so we can talk about a good secret, just as we're talking about a good day. So Julie, the fact that you have your kids as your editors, takes me to something I always believe, that kids are the best critics. They are absolutely honest with things, and I remember sitting with my son as we were looking at options for the book. With a children's book, people are thinking that you just have to string a couple of words together. If they rhyme, hat, cat, bat. It's not, because and you have to have the right words, and you have to have the right illustrations, because certain illustrations do not work with certain books, but then it also has to be the right size. So we went to his bookshelf and we started pulling all kinds of books off.
Me too. I did too. I was like, I want it to be a board book. And I was like, yeah, so a board book might not actually work because, based on the illustration. And I was like, hey, and then I remember actually sending him, actually sitting with him and pulling up on the screen the one where we're talking about the potty, when he was done with the potty, right? And I remember, and I knew Kevin was the guy because he would send me these images and I'd be like, oh my God, that's it. So the one where when he's done with the toilet and he's like, all done, and it's like twister fun, and his head is huge and the body's small. CJ looked at him and he was like, oh, his head is so big. He looks so funny. Ha, ha, ha. But use the body. And I was like, man, that's all we needed to get. Are you ready to use the body? Right? So it was just really, because again, wherever you can take your kids, and I recognize that, because at first when I started, I wasn't really sure, what was the age group that I was targeting, right? Well, I was like, well, of course my kid is, at this point, he's like 2. So I'm like, okay, definitely 2, right? Because 2 works. But now that he's 4, I recognize that 4 is probably my cutoff, right? Like his sister will read it to him because she's 10. He can't quite read as much right now. But she's only reading it because she's reading it to him, right? She's not reading it because she's getting an enjoyment from it. So I know it's not, 10 and 10 above. So I always tell people, anywhere between your newborn and your 4-year-old, they'll probably get a kick out of this story for the most part, because, we got the all done and the daddy, so all of those great things are in there. So I think, like I said, I wish I could take credit I can only take credit for the words. The illustration actually falls on a international guy who is very young and is somewhere in the Philippines, who I've never met in actual person, but has been a great little brother to mentor and kind of take on this journey with me.
I love that. And I know there's a parent that is probably potty training a child that can refer back to your book and say, see, CJ sat on the potty, or he stood to the potty, and now he says, all done. You can do the same.
All done. Yes. All done. And he was proud of himself too when he would do it too. He's like, oh, Mom, all done. I'm like, okay, good. What's next? And he'll put on his clothes and he's like, all done. I'm like, yeah, what's next? Right. So it's kind of like, I think I don't remember what TED Talk I was watching or listening to, but they were talking about how, the personalities of your kids. Like my kid is obviously, he's a leader. So you got to set him up to think that he's going through a day and telling you what to do. Right. So kind of like you give him a hint, but then you wait for him to kind of follow through. So I just wanted to make sure I documented all of that too, because like for him, he really does think he's the boss. And I'm
Aren't they really?
Right. Like they're pretty sure there are other families that have almost 2-year-olds that are going through sort of the same thing too. So, yes, that's a great question. Thank you.
There was something else that I really love to see in your book was that there was a very strong connection between CJ and his family. And as I talk with you now, and I talked with you before, I really understood where that love came from. But if someone has not had the conversation with you or hasn't heard your story, they can still feel that love of family on your page. Yeah. When the family embraces, or how everyone really corrals around him in getting him going in his day. So how has family shaped how you approached writing this book? And how do you hope that it will be shared with other families?
It's really easy to capture a good day, right? Nobody's going to want to write about a bad day, right? And to be honest, this might be our everyday routine, but every day doesn't go this smoothly, right? Right? Every day doesn't go this smoothly at that time. He's 4 now, so things have changed a little bit, or his routine changed a little bit. But, family is really important for me because, I didn't have that growing up, with the exception of just my mom, right? I don't even know my dad, right? So to be able to sort of like break the cycle, right? And even step in, for my daughter, right, as her bonus mom, like those things. And it's not always easy. It really isn't always easy. Like the hard job, I tell people all the time, is being a mom and being a wife. Like you have these other people that depend on you to do your part. And sometimes you're still trying to figure out, like, what is that part that I play, right? And it just kind of unfolds on a day to day. And for me, just being able to hear CJ just understand the concept of a good day, because he would be like, yeah, it's going to be a good day, right? Like those things were like really important to me, because I could see sort of like, okay, I'm on the right path, right? This little person is kind of getting it. He understands that everybody here is his support system, including the dog. I always don't want to forget Olaf. For me, it's just like, how do we depict that and make sure that the representation is real, right? That is a real thing. Now, I don't want anybody to read this book and be like, oh my God, the Carters, they have a great family. It's amazing. They don't have no issues. It's like picture perfect. That is far from it. However, we do have great times too. So I want to make sure that I'm documenting those great times as well.
And the importance of that good day begins at home. It's not when we as parents say, farewell, kid, have a good day at school or have a good day at daycare. It's the importance that good day begins at the onset when you rise, and all the things that happen within the house that carry you through.
And I was going to say that's a really good correlation.
We'll be right back with Julie Carter.
Hey, are you tired of walking down the greeting card aisle and not feeling represented? Well, Culture Greetings is the answer to that level of inclusivity. Visit culturegreetings.com, pick a greeting card with beautiful imagery of the culture and wonderful words that we use to connect and convey messages of love and thoughtfulness. Write your note on the inside of the card right there on the website, and we will mail it directly to your recipient from you, saving you a trip to the store. It's simple. Culture Greetings was created with you in mind. Visit culturegreetings.com.
You're listening to Authored by Us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show with your host, Zenzi Hodge.
All right, we're back with Julie Carter. So Julie, tell us where we can find your book, A Good Day.
Amazon.com. That is the only place it's being sold currently. I do have a couple on hand, but for the most part, Amazon on Amazon.com. And it is in the Kindle version, and it's also in paperback.
And as always, we'll have a link to Julie's book in our podcast notes. And this episode, we're announcing something new that you will find on our website, authoredbyus.com. We've added our Authored by Us bookshelf. So you will be able to find Julie's book, A Good Day, and all of the other books we featured on our podcast on our bookshelf. And that'll take you directly to the site to purchase Julie's book. Now, you just launched your book in December. So this is obviously during the time of this pandemic. And so the things an author would traditionally do when they're launching their book and going out and publicizing their book can't necessarily be done during this particular time. So how has it been marketing your book in the days of COVID?
So I'll be completely honest with you. I mean, I don't know, again, like I told you pretty much off the air, I don't know if it's naivete. My goal is really to memorialize my stories of my family, right? So that they can live on even after I'm gone, right? I mean, because again, the sense of urgency that I currently have, considering that I'm an end stage cancer student, don't like the word patient, student, right? Because this is the rest of my life thing. Since that's sort of the space that I'm in, I really wasn't thinking about like advertising and putting it out there. And again, I wasn't really sure I was ready for the world to know that I was an end stage cancer student either, right? I've been doing this journey now going on 3 years, and not even my really good friends really know that this is the thing that happened. So I'm pretty sure when this airs, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh wait, that's on the back of the book," because I officially, I really officially launched, even though it was available in the Amazon store as of December. I really didn't launch it until February 1 of this year. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. So I put it out there, and the way I advertise it currently is I literally just posted on my personal page a copy of the cover and a copy of the back. And I just said, hey, in light of Black History Month, there's a new African-American author, Julie Carter. And guess what? Like, this is what it is. And the outpouring of support has been amazing. But I'm like I told you off the air again, I'm like, I don't think they're reading the back of the book. Like, I think everybody's just like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. But, as they really, try to, as they go from front to back, I'm pretty sure the conversation is going to switch a little bit. Oh my God, I didn't know. Like, what? 3 years? What? But again, like I said, I don't want to be, I live to inspire. I really do. That is ever since being diagnosed, that is my thing. Live to inspire, not only for my kids, but in, everybody that I encounter and touch. So that's what I want to continue to do. If my words do that in a page beautifully, illustrated by Kevin Banal, then that's what we're going to continue to do. If it's a matter of inspiring with just the way I am in going about my daily life and not giving up and quitting, then that's what I want to do too. But, again, I definitely, I'm happy to pay it forward.
I love that you said that you live to inspire, because there's always something from which you gain inspiration, and there's inspiration that you pass on to others. So I ask this of all of my authors, because you are an author of a children's book. What is the children's book that inspired you?
Growing up, I would say it was Dr. Seuss, right? Because Dr. Seuss, he would rhyme in the craziest of ways and be funny as all get out. So I love Dr. Seuss growing up. It's funny because I have my first degree is in English. So I have an undergrad in English with a concentration in creative writing, right? So I thought, like I told you, I thought I'd be a Zane writer or, right? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But as I grew and I had my son, the Love You Forever really did inspire me, because I was like, this author just put in this book the stages of her son kind of getting older, being a teenager, being rambunctious, not really listening, him growing up, then having his own child, her being sick and fragile. And then the roles have kind of switched. I mean, it literally put me in tears. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is what a book is really about. Now, my son at the point didn't even understand like why I was crying, right? He was just listening to the story. But it really was inspirational to me because I was like, man, I'm pretty sure this Robert guy, if Robert was the one that wrote this, was he writing it from his perspective, right? His mom's perspective? Like, but nevertheless, like if that is his story, if that is his truth, then this could be anybody, right? It could be anybody that was brown or white or in between. And I was like, what better way than to, sort of like give you an idea of the cycle of life than to put it in such a way, right? Like I'm going to be all these little things. And then at some point I'm going to be taking care of my parent too. I mean, the irony is that, when I first read that book, I had no idea that, that could possibly be me sooner rather than later, right? The one that is sick that might need, a little bit more intervention moving forward. So I would definitely say in my older age, it has become this book, Love You Forever, that was given to me by Kristen Higgy, my old basketball teammate from George Mason. But, when I was a kid, it was definitely Dr. Seuss.
Julie, I have absolutely enjoyed talking with you. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Authored by Us to share your book, A Good Day, but not just to share the book, but to give the inspiration of going forth bravely by telling your story, deciding to write this as a love letter to your children, to memorialize the experiences you've had. And in putting it in a book, you decided to share it with all of us. So thank you for being brave, being honest, being creative, and sharing with us your love.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you so much for having me. It was definitely an honor. And hopefully, the memories of this conversation definitely go on way past my expiration date. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So listeners, as we close the cover on this bookshelf gem, I would love to thank our guest author today, Ms. Julie Carter, and her wonderful book that she shared, A Good Day. This episode would not be possible without our sponsor, Culture Greetings. When you're looking for the perfect way to say thank you, happy birthday, or even just sending well wishes, add a bit of culture to your greeting. Visit Culture Greetings at their website, culturegreetings.com. And we would not be able to have this episode if it weren't for listeners like you joining us to hear from our authors and hear about their books. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. We look forward to you joining us next week. Until then, happy reading.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Authored by Us. Every author has a story to tell, and we enjoy bringing their stories to you each week. Whether you are listening as a young reader or are sharing this podcast with the young readers in your life, we are delighted to celebrate these stories inspired by diversity and shared in the voice of their authors. Follow us on social media at Authored by Us and subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss an episode. Have a gem on your bookshelf that we should have on ours? Visit us online at authoredbyus.com and let us know. Until next time, happy reading.